Okay, we're back for Net+Lab 7, Remote Access RDP, Lesson 2, Configuring the Routing and Remote Access RRAS Server Role. Configuring a Windows 2008 R2 server as a RRAS provides software routing and allows a remote access feature for VPN services. Acting as a router, the server can manage data between network segments or subnets. This does not handle heavy router demands of a hardware-based router, but is less expensive and can be used to handle the lighter routing loads in some areas of the network. So let's begin. Enable RRAS and configure it as a VPN server for secure connection between two private networks, site-to-site VPN. Step 1. Click on Windows 2K8 R2 Internal 1 icon in the topology diagram and use the instructions in the Lab Settings section to log into the Windows 2K8 R2 Internal 1. This server will simulate a server that is connected to both a private and public network using two NICs. This exercise will enable you to proceed through the process of configuring RRAS for VPN, but not allow connectivity testing. So we're already logged into the internal 1 machine from earlier. We'll continue on to step 2. The initial configuration tasks and/or server management windows appear when logged into the 2K8 R2 Internal 1. If they do appear, click on the Server Manager icon in the taskbar. It's not open because we had this open from the previous lab. We're going to continue on with selecting it from the taskbar here as instructed. Step 3, in the Server Manager window, click the plus next to the roles in the left pane and then click on the plus next to the Network Policy and Access Services. You will see Routing and Remote Access role has been installed but is not enabled, which is indicated in the downward pointing red arrow. The installation has already been completed for you, so RRAS appears in the list of the server roles under Network Policy and Access Services. You must now enable the service to configure your server for routing and remote access. So let's go ahead and check this as instructed. So we're going to hit the plus button next to the roles, and then we're going to hit the plus button next to Network Policy and Access, and here is that red arrow they were explaining under the routing and remote access, as you can see highlighted. Step 4 says to right-click the routing and remote access and then click Configure and enable routing and remote access. So we're going to select it, then we're going to right-click it, and then select Configure and enable routing and remote access in the pop-up menu. Looks like we have a setup wizard that just popped open. It says on the welcome page, click Next. That's the first step to the wizard. Step 6, on the configuration page, click Remote Access Dial-Up or VPN and then click Next. And we can already see the radio button is already selected for Remote Access Dial-Up or VPN. We'll select Next. Step 7, on the Route Access page, put a check in the box next to VPN, then click Next. Remote Access says you can set up the server to receive both dial-up and VPN connections. We're just doing the VPN, and we're hitting Next. And then it says on VPN connection page, select the network interface that is connected to the public internet for which remote VPN clients will connect to this server. In this exercise, you will be choosing the IP address to the external network to simulate an internet connection. Leave the Enable Security on the selected interface by setting up Static Packet Filters box checked. This will allow only VPN traffic on this link. Click Next to continue. Now, they didn't exactly provide us the IP address except inside of this screenshot, but if you didn't have a screenshot of this, I want you to notice that the external address starts with a 131.107 and the internal one starts with 192.168. The 192 is usually designated for private and this outlier, the 131 IP address, is more than likely the external one. So we're going to hit next. Now on to step 9. On the IP address assignment page, you will specify the way in which the RRAS server will acquire IP addresses for the remote VPN clients. Click Automatically. This is used because Windows 2K8R2 Internal 1 machine is configured with the DHCP role, and then click Next. And we already have it selected automatically, but if it wasn't, go ahead and click on the radio button for automatically and then hit Next. On the Managing Multiple Remote Access Servers page, select No, then RRAS uses its local account database of users. Click Next, selecting to use a centralized radius server for authenticity of your network clients would require that an additional server to be configured for user account authentication. And we're not doing that, so that's why we're selecting Next. Then on the completing page, click Finish. Click OK on all remaining pop-ups. No additional action is required as indicated in the pop-ups. You have now explored the configuration options for the Windows 2K8R2 Internal 1 machine with the role of routing and remote access service. So we're going to hit Finish, and we get a pop-up to confirm this, which says remote access service is unable to enable routing and remote access for the probable reason like exceptions and API to check the status of Windows Firewall service. In this case, RAS may not accept VPN connections, and user action. You can manually open the port of routing and remote access in the Windows Firewall if it is running. To support the relaying of DHCP messages from remote access clients, you must configure the properties of the DHCP relay agent with the IP address of your DHCP server and click Help for more information. I'm just going to go ahead and select OK. And now it's starting to enable and initialize the routing and remote access. And now we can probably click Finish for this window to close. And you'll see that we have a green button showing it's enabled now. In conclusion, Routing and Remote Access Service, RRAS, is named for two primary networking services that it provides. Routing is used to direct incoming and outgoing traffic. Remote Access Service allows remote users to access an organization's private network and gives them access to resources on the LAN. Virtual Private Networks, VPN, and dial-up networking are two types of remote connectivity. VPN is secure point-to-point connection through a public network to a private network. Dial-up networking is a connection through a public network to a Dial-up networking is a direct physical connection between the dial-up networking client and the dial-up networking server using a telephone connection to a physical port on the remote access server. Now it's time for review questions. Review question number 1. Routing and remote access services allow users to connect to private networks using VPN, or also known as Virtual Private Network. Number 2, true or false? Using a radius service with RRAS means that the local server database will be used to authenticate users for accessing the local network. False. You actually have to set up a separate server that will be used for user authentication. And then number 3, on the VPN connection page, if IP address selected is the address that belongs to the network connected to, it's going to be connected to the public internet. And then clients will be able to connect to the server using remote VPN. And that concludes Lesson 2 for Lab 7 Remote Access RDP. Please join again for Lesson 3.